So, man, choked up already. Good afternoon, everybody. I think it's afternoon. My name is Greg Simmons. For those who don't know me, I'm married to Shelly Pratt. So I'm fortunate to be married into the family. I was asked to stand in today for Greg Crosser. Just a real quick update. We just got word that he does have a little bit of a diagnosis at this point. So now I think that we think that they'll be able to start treating Greg. But he's definitely said that he couldn't be here to deliver this eulogy. But he did put it together for me. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes because I won't be able to do this justice. I know he would do much better at delivering this eulogy than I will. So close your eyes and imagine that he's up here standing and delivering this eulogy. Good afternoon. My name is Greg, and I am honored to have been given this opportunity to speak at this service, honoring the memory of Janice Faye Pratt, or as she was affectionately known to me as Aunt Janice. Everything I know about her has been good. She raised her kids, then worked as a bank officer for years, and enjoyed life. Later, after retirement, she and Uncle Ken moved to the lake house in Michigan, and then to her home state of South Carolina. They lived near Pamplico and then moved to Little River, South Carolina. I always enjoyed getting together with Aunt Janice and Uncle Ken. Two topics were sure to come up in our time together. One was God and our relationship with Him, and family. She loved family, and if there was a question about family to be asked, she was the go-to person for the answer. She will most definitely be missed. As I thought about what to say about Aunt Janice today, I immediately thought about the scripture from Proverbs that spoke of the virtuous woman. I would like to share some thoughts from Proverbs 31 with her in mind. The virtuous woman, Proverbs 31, verses 10 through 12, 13b, 15, 17 through 18, 25, 27, 28, and 30. Who can find a noble wife? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband trusts her completely. She gives him all the important things he needs. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She loves to work with her hands. She gets up while it is still dark. She provides food for her family. She gets ready to work hard. Her arms are strong. She sees that her trading earns a lot of money. She puts on strength and honor as if they were her clothes. She watches over family matters. She is busy all the time. Her children stand up and call her blessed. Proverbs, her husband, also rises up and he praises her. Charm can fool you. Beauty fades. But a woman who has respect for the Lord shall be praised. With this description of the virtuous woman, or Aunt Janice in mind, I believe verse 30 sums it up. Aunt Janice was a Christian and raised her family in a godly home. I believe that if she could whisper in my ear today, she would ask me to invite all of her family and friends here too, if they don't already have a relationship with Jesus Christ, to do so immediately. She loves her family and friends and would want them to develop that relationship with Christ that will allow them to meet Him one day just as she has. Thank you for this opportunity to share some thoughts about Aunt Janice. I trust that the words shared will encourage you towards peace in Christ. Love, Greg. On a slightly personal note, I will say that I'm really honored to be standing in for Greg today because, as we all know, Greg and I were both Aunt Janice's favorite nephews. How can you go wrong with the same first name? And you know, I think we're the only two guys in the family that I've met so far that could hold a candle to Aunt Janice's ability to carry a conversation. So it just means we're a lot of mouth. So thank you very much, Jamie and Tammy and the family. Anybody that wants to get up and say any words about Aunt Janice, please come on up front. We are recording this. so that we can show them to Ken and hopefully distribute the video of both the service and the video of this to anybody that wants it, as soon as I figure out where the best means to get that out to everyone. So, Anthony, come on up.
Here?
Have it.
All right. At our church that we went to, the ladies had a ladies' prayer meeting. And we prayed for this lady's husband, and he worked for GM in Flint. And that man got saved in this humble private build missionary hospitals and schools on the board for 30 years. And that man got saved. We prayed for Ken over and over. And we just started to pray. Janice says, I gotta pray for Ken right now. Gary, you remember snowmobiles? And Ken was riding his snowmobile. It was after dark because you had your lights on. And right now is an arched tree. Right now. He couldn't think. He just laid flat back, took the hood off, everything. Gary had enough time to. When Janice got out of church and came home, she says, what's wrong? Because he's white as a sheet. And he says, I was almost killed tonight, beheaded, because of a tree. What time did that happen? A little after 7. I was praying for you at that minute. That's the kind of person Janet was. Mind God always.
I guess I can say a little bit. There's a lot to say. Greg, if I go on too far, just give me one of these things here, cut it off.
Look, that lady out there,
My mother loved the lady. She loved y'all dearly. The sisters-in-law, brother-in-laws, you were brothers and sisters. You wasn't anything more than that. You were just brothers and sisters. Y'all treated her well as she was young, going to Michigan. You took her right in, and we're grateful for that. The lady could talk. Lee, you can attest to that. She'd be at the house and Shelly and y'all, you've been around, we'd be eating and everybody's done eating and Mom's still sitting there talking, got a full plate of So, all right, Mom, come on, let's eat so we can have some dessert. But again, thank y'all for coming. She was a lovely lady, she loved y'all, and thank you.
Well, I'll say a couple things. I was the youngest, so I was like 13 when they got married. And Ken would work nights, so when I got home from school, I'd always go back to their house. And so me and Janice would have fun watching TV and taking care of the kids. And so I got really close to Jamie, Tammy, and Dana. And they were like my own, even though I was too young. And so, yeah, it was so much. We had a lot of fun. We used to get one Coke. We'd take the old Jeep down to the corner, get a Coke, come back home, put the kids to bed, and then we'd sit and watch TV and have Coke and popcorn.
Tell them about the babysitter.
She did love her.
But they did.
Oh, one time, one more thing. So I was the youngest, so I didn't matter. So all the women went to town shopping, and we had 2 little kids, and that was Jamie and Rick, my oldest brother's son. And Janice had Jamie bouncing on her lap really hard to get him calmed down and go to sleep. And Nan would have Rick up here rocking him like crazy. So I had to. They left me with the 2 babies, And so I was bouncing really hard and rocking. And I got them both to sleep. And then when they come home, I never again, don't you ever do this to me.
I wrote down myself because I'll ramble on and get lost on what I was saying, but I'm Shelley, I'm one of the Michigan nieces, and Aunt Janice was like a mother to me. She was a sister to her sister-in-laws and sister to her brother-in-laws, for sure. I have the best memories of summer vacations with my family, Ken and Janice, and Jamie and Tammy and Dana. We would go to South Carolina, which was my favorite place to come. But one time we were camping at Lake Michigan, and Tammy and I think we were 14 and 17, and we thought we were something out here on that beach, laying in the sun. And our mothers had the audacity to come out there with bikinis on and lay in the sun. And we were horrified. And they had to have been like maybe in their late 30s, I think. And so the brats that we were, we went up to the campsite and we got all kinds of junk food, cheese, popcorn, and chips, and we snuck back out there around them, and we kind of quietly threw the food all around them, knowing the seagulls would attack them, and they did. And they got up screaming and ran to the beach, and then Tammy and I laid back in the sun, and we were happy now to the world. I always admired my Aunt Janice because I thought of how hard it had to have been to be 19 years old, leave everything she knew, her family and friends in South Carolina, and move to Michigan, but we loved her, and she was like the organizer of the family, she was the communicator, and she included everybody. My mom's two sisters got to know all of the Pratts, and Aunt Janice would always ask about them. Ask about their kids and their grandkids. And even a couple weeks ago when I was talking to her on the phone, she was asking about people. So they always felt welcomed. And when I called them the other day and told them she passed away, they both said, she always made us feel like we were part of her family too. So I was happy that they were able to move back to South Carolina. And she told me one time she felt like she was where she should be. She was able to reconnect with her family and friends and start coming back to her childhood church. I know she was able to help with her niece, Dee Prosser, when she was diagnosed with cancer. She took her to a lot of appointments. And then when Dana was diagnosed with cancer, and Janice traveled back and forth. And I don't know at that point, I think Ken and Janice might have been a little bit more work for Larry and Dana. They weren't able to do as much, but Aunt Janice was always there trying to do what she could to help her daughter. When my nephew died in 2016, they drove to Michigan, and they had to have been in their early 80s, maybe late 70s. But they drove all the way to Michigan to be there for my family. We appreciated that. She hated getting older and not being able to do everything. When they moved to Little River, she told me about her neighbors and friends that helped them with little things. One of her neighbors was able to drive her to Lake City, so she was able to be with her brother, Cecil, before he passed away. And she was always so thankful for anything that anyone did. We were able to stay in touch with frequent phone calls, and a lot of times I was busy, I was still working, and I would put her off. And then I would call her when I was on a long trip, driving. When I had an hour to talk, and she would talk, and she talked about everybody. As my mom was diagnosed with dementia, and she would call my mom quite often. My mom and dad moved in with us, and she called my mom almost every day. And towards the end, my mom couldn't talk much. My Aunt Janice just talked about memories, things that we did. And she told her one the last day, she said how much she loved her, and she was a sister to her, and that she would see her soon. So I know we're all sad that she's gone, but I know that she was happy to see Dana, Dee, her parents, her brothers and sisters. She loved everyone. Thanks.
That's a hard act to follow. Nobody really knows who I am in this group, other than some cousins that I'm with, and I've introduced myself to some long-lost cousins over there that have drifted away. We were, talk up?
I'm
She's
your
my
sister.
But we were all, my grandmother lived right up the road here, right next to one, and all our uncles lived around here, and the Fosters lived over here, and we were all together when we were growing up. And then we kind of drifted, I drifted away, and then I really left, and then Janice got married, and she was up in Michigan, and I was up in Tennessee doing my thing. We never saw each other for a long period of time. I always missed her when she would visit. I was somewhere else, couldn't come, whatever the reasons. But I was taking my mother and aunt, my wife and I, on a trip down to all the home places and the old churches and where they grew up. So they go to bed early back then, so they went to sleep early at the motel, and I found out that Janice was in town, and that she was at a ball game where her grandson was playing ball. Well, I finally found out where that was, and went to the ball game, and saw Janice, and it was like we were never apart again. I mean, we hadn't been apart all those years that we hadn't seen each other. Just like we just came home that night at the ball game while somebody was hitting the balls out, and I was scared it was going to hit my car. So she knew that I told her that Mom and Aunt Clara was with us, and Donna was back at the motel. So we made arrangements to have breakfast the next morning at some restaurant in Lake City. Jane, I don't know if you remember that. But, so we had breakfast. Ken was there with us, and Jamie came in later to get Ken, and they left. I went to pay the bill. Jamie, you had paid the bill. Do you remember paying the bill? Anyway, thank you. That's all I got.
Can I say something? I know I'm not family, I feel like family. I love that woman. And what a testimony. She was here, when she came back, I had already come back. Anyway. And she was one of the rocks that this church is built on. Her and her family, and this church has survived because of the foundation that it had from that generation, I believe. And she was such, as I said, a testimony, a walking testimony of what a virtuous woman is, of a wife with a husband, loved her husband, loved her family, loved her church. She was always so energetic to jump in and do anything that was needed of her. And then she was almost like a counselor for all of us. And Lord has blessed me so much to have examples like that. There are several examples, and she is one of them. I want to be that woman as she was, all as gracefully, aged as gracefully as she did, and was still able to do what she did. I want my husband to love me like her husband loved her. That was one of the biggest things you could always tell, hey, love that woman. And as a woman, you know, that's what you want, a man to love you like that. And so, just like I just gotta say, she was such a testimony. And I loved her very much, and I love y'all because I know that y'all are a product of that.
Can I say one more thing? We was building the party hall at the church, and so the preacher announced for the men to meet on a Saturday and put the roofing on the building. Nobody showed up, but guess who did? Janice and I, and we did one whole half of that thing that by herself. But that's how Janice was stepped.
I'm a member of this church too. When Janice moved here, I didn't know her because I came from another community. But as she said, she was a wonderful woman. She loved everybody and would do anything for anybody. And she showed her love for God and family. And when a woman does that, that means a lot. A woman loves the church and loves God and family.
Anybody else?
Again, thank you all. It's a pleasure to see you all. Thanks to the church for preparing the meal and all. And look forward to seeing you in the future. The ones that are driving back to Michigan, Columbia, wherever, drive safely. And thank you for the family once again.
We love you, brother.